powered by Reviting, streaming from the Reviting Digital Studio. It's the David Daily. Exploring frontier technology, artificial intelligence, quantum innovation, and the intersection of faith, funding, and the future. Here's your host, David Goki.
Welcome from Boston for New York and Boston Tech Week. It's David Goki, your host here of the David Daily Show. And we're very excited today to have another episode of Funding, Faith, and Future, where we interview thought leaders like yourself, investors, operators, and people who are faith-minded to learn more about technology, to learn more about the funding ecosystem, and also to get to share what you care about and to listen to our audience. So if you're tuning in, please post exactly where you're tuning in from. We would love to get to know you. And if you're on LinkedIn, we love to go live on LinkedIn. If you've been thinking, man, content is hard, marketing is hard, editing videos is difficult, and I always know I need to be present, or maybe you're finally thinking about increasing your personal brand and you want to have a personal brand, or you want to build up your confidence to go live on LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook or X or Instagram or any of the other platforms, I would love to have a conversation with you. So go ahead and check out reviting.com, or even better yet, shoot me a direct message on LinkedIn and just say, David, it would be great to get connected with you and we can help you with your marketing brand for just 1 hour per week. We've created a leveraged system on our time where for just 1 hour a week, you two could also go live. And guess what? With this long hour of long form content, we then repurpose that into short form videos, posts across all social media, carousels, and all the ingredients that you would need to be successful. So without further ado, I want to introduce our special guest, Yoon. Yoon, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you today. Where are you tuning in from?
Tuning in from Glencoe, Illinois, which is a little bit north of Chicago. So generally in the Chicago area, but it's a lovely place here.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm curious, what's the weather like in the Chicago region today?
Today it's unbelievable. It's probably like high 60s, low 70s, blue skies. So you don't have very many of these days, so you got to enjoy it.
Nice. I love that. I'm curious, just out of curiosity, because I am half Korean and I do share that on my platform. I'm curious, what is your ethnic background and cultural background? Just tell us a little bit more about yourself.
I came from Korea with my parents when they immigrated here when I was 5. So I am Korean and I grew up here in New York City. And I think I consider myself fully American. It's just this is the life that I've had, and it's fabulous to be alive at this time and this age of technology, and be able to participate in it is even better.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. My mom was a South Korean immigrant to Los Angeles, where I was born. I'm very proud of my Korean American heritage. And my late mother, who passed 4 years ago, was a very proud American. And so every day to me is South Korean Heritage Day. And I really appreciate the melting pot and culture that we have. So being based in the East Coast in New York has just been a wonderful blessing and dream come true. So why don't you just tell the audience a little bit more about Bolt Technologies, how you got started, and kind of the key problems that you solve at Bolt?
Okay, I mean it's a little bit of a roundabout way of having started Bolts. Bolts was started about a year ago as a spinoff from a company called Nuts Technologies, which we started back in 2016. Um, Nuts Technologies is a privacy-focused cryptographic logistics company, and we do applied cryptography. And our goal for Nuts Technologies was to deliver the most private data secure systems. And the way to keep that under people's control, or users' control, rather than relying on large institutions and corporations to keep your data private. And one of the big problems that I've seen is that we have a lot of technology which is very fancy, but when it comes to uh, making your data private and moving it around amongst your own devices, it is very, very difficult or nearly impossible without the automated help and services of very large companies that basically do not have, uh, the same sort of focus on your privacy than their business models. So that's why Nuts was started, and Nuts started going into areas where we were winning federal grants from the military and defense sectors, as well as even the NIST. And the reason that wasn't our first go-to market, because we're not defense guys, but what we realized was the defense agencies were very interested
Yes.
in looking at new approaches. And what it turns out that we developed at Nuts was so far off the horizon, it wasn't even funny. And I didn't even realize that. And that's why
Right.
it's been taking a long time. And um, but we've gotten unbelievable validations, right? So we're the only company to be where our protocol was awarded a NIST small business grant to
Wow.
show the NIST cryptographers how to do transitions of cryptography for post quantum cryptography ciphers on the fly on a per message basis. And
Wow.
and what they told us was that we asked when I first got on the call with them after we won it, it's a 6-month project. They give you $100,000 to do it. And I asked he was one of the senior guys leading the post quantum cryptography selection committee, and I asked him, hey, why did you pick us? I mean, you have an entire globe to choose solutions from and
Right.
proposals, and we don't even have a background in cryptography or applied. We don't come from RSA, we don't come from
Right.
NSA or Unit 8200, right? So he said, well, we didn't think that that level of crypto agility was even possible, and we wanted to see it if
Wow.
it was
Okay.
true. And we showed it to them, and they were,
Nice.
and interestingly enough, at the end of the 6 months, we demoed the whole thing, and they really loved it. And we had this already working. It's just we integrated any PQC libraries that we could find, which was the post quantum cryptography libraries, and um, and then at the
Nice.
end, one of the members over there said, "Hey, did you guys look at blockchains?" And we're like, "We're not blockchain guys, but
Right.
what about it?" And they said that your technology may actually be able to help them. So that started the conversation amongst ourselves to do a little research. And we went back to our limited partners and told them about what our NIST conversation and project, uh, how it ended, and what was the suggestion. And they really liked the idea. So our current investors at the time in Nuts threw in another $1 million. They said, hey, get Bolt started and concentrate on taking your protocol technology, which we're calling QFlex now, and focus it to commercialize it for the blockchain industry. So
Nice.
in essence, what it turns out to be is that when you do a blockchain transaction, that turns into what we call a QFlex message. And that means that we have the technology to be able to have a user change the digital signature methodology that they use to protect that transaction on the fly.
Wow. I love that.
Yep.
Wow. We have so much to talk about. Coming from Microsoft for 10 years, we invented 3 security products there. So the format for this show, as you know, Yoon, is funding, faith, and future. So we have 3 specific topics, and we're going to get right into that first one on funding.
Okay. Hi, you're frozen there.
Funding.
Time to talk about funding.
There we go. Okay, our first topic is raising capital for quantum security infrastructure. You are an expert in this space. So if someone's thinking about raising funding, First of all, where should they start? You've been through the path, you've been down the journey. What are some of those gotchas for someone starting to look for funding to maybe even get a 100K grant or a million grant like you did?
It's all I could say is that it's a very difficult journey. Mainly, there's several factors that are working against you. First of all, not many people, especially the masses of investors out there, they don't have specialists who look at cryptography or applied cryptography, especially when it comes to post-quantum cryptography security. And so you need to find the right audience, and that's very, very difficult. Um, and then secondly, you need pedigree. Pedigree definitely helps. If you're from the industry and you've done your tour where you've spent 10 or 20 years working for applied cryptography companies, I think you open doors very, very quickly. But there's a catch-22 to that, right? Because the quagmire that we ended up with in the personal security and the enterprise security and the cybersecurity type of postures that are present all across the internet is a product of that type of thinking, right? So, I think there's a very famous saying, right, that says that it's insane to do the same things over and over again in the same manner and think that you're going to get a different result, right? So, I think there's some sort of level of that type of quandary in the industry. But most investors, when they are taught how to do venture capital, I think what I've personally witnessed in the types of questions and interviews that we've had is that they go by a playbook, and the playbook says, "Have you done previous startups? How long have you been a specialist in this industry?" And those are the types of questions. Have you raised money before? And things like that. And that already starts eliminating a lot of major new um, types of efforts to be really looked at in a genuine way. And you
Yeah,
know, it may work for the massive, bell curve middle, right? But
right.
when you're in this little category where you're over the horizon stuff, you need to find that sponsor who says, you know what, I'm going to take a risk on that because I agree with
I like
you.
that.
And those are exceedingly small, very, very difficult to find.
Right. I really appreciate how you're talking about kind of this very narrowly focused ICP, right? Or ideal customer persona, ideal customer profile. So, who is that ICP today in post quantum?
In post quantum, what we're finding is very well governed blockchains that are
Mm,
generally Um, they may not be totally public, but they're usually more closely controlled, and they're not as chaotic as, let's say, like Bitcoin governance. I think everybody agrees that it's some managed chaos. Ethereum seems to be a little bit more heavy-handed with their efforts, a little bit more organized, and then you know, when you look at the private blockchains that are done by major institutions, or even collaboration amongst institutions, they have a much tighter governance structure. So they are beginning to look like our ICP. That you need a tight governance structure that can make decisions, and you need to be able to contact the right technology teams within there, and even in the IT space within blockchain, it's a very narrow focus, and it really boils down to just a handful of people, maybe even two or three people at most, within major efforts that you have to get to, and they have to be open-minded. They
right.
because a lot of I got to tell you, a lot of very experienced, very sophisticated technologists are sometimes very biased.
Right. Right. And that biases shows up in the technology that they build.
Yep,
But
I
focusing on
tell
funding, right?
Yeah, we're focusing on funding, and but those are the gateways that you have to
Right.
pass, right? Because the guys with the purse strings will not be that expert, but you need
Right.
to find that expert in their organization that could
Right.
vouch for understanding your technology. So you're always working through a proxy, um,
Right. Right.
and these are very when we're talking about applied cryptography and then post quantum cryptography. This is the niche of a niche, right? This is like
Right.
generally people don't even understand what you're talking about,
Right.
and so when we bring our ideas to how we implemented QFlex to cryptographers, they um, they get surprised that it's actually
Right.
incredibly logical, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, it makes sense. And then sometimes, they'll say, oh, but we have our own approach and we'll do it, and
Right.
that's fine. You can't stop people from doing that. But you just need that champion. You need to find somebody that will recognize the work that you've done. And luckily for us, we're kind of thick-headed in that way, thick-skinned, right? We
Good.
just go that way, and we have a belief that this is what we've seen is different and can be better. And it is turning out to be where our approach is really very logical, um, very advanced. And if we go into a blockchain that we help transition to post quantum cryptography, we'll get there much faster than the effort that Ethereum and Google announced last month, which they said that they're going to be PQC resistant by 2029. We'll get you there in about 12, 15 months.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so we have a lot of folks coming in from YouTube. I love to see you all on YouTube on our LinkedIn marketing show. So we do have a lot of people who are watching this, both investors as well as career-oriented people. So why don't we just start at the basics, like what is applied cryptography and what is post-quantum cryptography, also known as PQC? What can we just get a baseline definition of those from your perspective, Yoon?
Sure. So cryptography is a way of mathematically jumbling up data, and there's a formula for it, and and the idea is that unless you have a key, which is a bunch of numbers, that unlocks this algorithm, the jumble of data that it protected can't be undone. And that is the basis of cryptography, that you need one key or two keys, depending upon the type of cryptography you're talking about. So it is very mathematical. Their cryptographers are they're a unique bunch of people, and I don't even presume to tell you that I know how all the cryptography works. I know the behaviors and characteristics. Then there's another class of people like myself who are applied cryptographers. Applied cryptographers take the characteristics and the fundamental basis of a cryptographic approach, and there's many of them. So that's the key, is that there's many algorithms that can protect data, and we'll go to why that's so. But applied cryptographers take the variations of these algorithms, cryptographic algorithms, and apply them to computer systems in order to protect data at rest and data in transit. um, and so that is what these two fields are. Now, cryptography itself has two types of approaches of securing data. One is called public key cryptography, and then the other one is called symmetric cryptography or secret sharing. And they have their useful functions, but the characteristic is that public key cryptography has a public and a private key that's matched. It's a pair of keys. And the way the pair of keys are generated is through some sort of mathematical relation, at least for the last 50 years. The two most popular methods is called RSA, for the three MIT professors who invented that one. And then The second one is called elliptic curve cryptography, and or simply put, ECC. So these are called asymmetric public key cryptography, which always produces keys in pairs. And that is the essence behind maybe, 99% of the assets protected in the blockchain world, right? Most blockchains used and settled on using ECC cryptography everywhere and for digital signatures. And so when people talk about, hey, I have a wallet, I have a cold wallet or whatever, they're safekeeping their private key, which allows them to sign their assets to give away to somebody or buy something through a cryptocurrency transaction, that they use their private key to digitally sign a transaction saying it is them doing it. And then the public key can be exposed to the system, and anybody can actually verify that digital signature came from you. Um, at the heart of the quantum revolution is that back in like 1996 or 97, a scientist named Peter Shor, um, created an algorithm called now is appropriately called Shor's algorithm. And what he showed was that if you had a theoretically powerful quantum computer that worked in this way, and he described it, then you could use his methodology to crack cryptography like elliptic curve cryptography and RSA, which is asymmetric cryptography. And that was groundbreaking, that such a methodology can exist if you had a relevant quantum computer that was powerful enough to do that. And so that wasn't really taken very seriously by the industry when he published the paper, but over the last 30 years, that's changing, right? Because the actual development and advancement of quantum computers have now accelerated to the point where they could literally show that for smaller size keys, Peter Shor's algorithm actually works. And now your ECC and RSA protected data is being threatened. Every time there's a new quantum computing advancement announcement, there's a flurry of panic and attention paid to this, because then every time you get one of those announcements, we're getting closer and closer to our modern cryptography system breaking down, which is so to put it to give you the effect of what RSA and ECC protects. You're talking not just blockchains, you're talking financial systems, your web browsers, um, everything on the internet that requires any kind of protection, which is like Zoom sessions, phone calls, streamings, anything. And then on top of that is national security. All intelligence, all military systems rely on this type of computerized privacy mechanism. So, you know, it's that's why there's so much effort and so much attention. And when you see these articles fomenting panic and fear, um, some in some way it is justified, but I think the flip side is that we do have methods that are being proposed and that are being recognized as potentially being very good at protecting us from the type of computations that quantum computers are good at. And these are called post-quantum cryptography ciphers or algos. And so that's what the NIST, the US Department of Commerce's agency that basically is like the national laboratory of the United States, they standardize things all over the place. They standardize, the measurement of the meter, the weight of a kilogram. And one of the things that they standardize is cryptography algos. And they've done a tremendous job for the last 10 years. They started a post-quantum cryptography selection program where they invited everybody in the world who's a cryptographer, and to submit their best ideas to be in this kind of competition or in a selection process. And in August of 2024, they selected three to be raised to the level of an NIST cryptography standard. And that was called the Kyber, Dilithium, and Sphinx. Um, Dilithium and Sphinx are digital signature algorithms, and then Kyber is a key encapsulation mechanism, or KEM. Um, so now we actually have NIST standards for quantum resilient cryptographic algorithms, uh, standing next to ECC and RSA, which have already been NIST standards for decades. And the problem is that, we say that there's three standards that came out for post-quantum cryptography. Then you go, oh, we're replacing RSA and ECC with three, so it's not that bad. But there's a little caveat. Each of these cryptographic algorithms, including RSA and ECC, and each of the PQC standards, they all come in different flavors, right? So we call them variants. And currently, RSA and ECC have their own flavors. There's probably, easily half a dozen or more. You've heard like you might have heard like RSA key sizes, right? So there's like three or
Right.
four different key sizes for RSA. Those
Right.
are all variants. ECC
Right.
has the same type of variance in parameter selections. The three PQC algos, they come in like 18 flavors, right? And then the next question that you might ask is, hey, why so many variants, right? Why
Right.
can't we just select, the one that works? Therein lies the heart of this problem.
Right.
Modern cryptography is not provably secure. So
Right.
there is no math right now that they figured out. And I want somebody to come up with that, Fields medal for get a Fields medal for doing that, right? But
Yeah.
there is no mathematical way that they figured out to provably show that any cryptography that they have is secure,
Right.
theoretically. And because of that, these are all guesses. And the
Yeah.
only reason we say that AES, the most popular symmetric cryptography, RSA and ECC are secure is that they've been around for like almost 50 years, and they've been
Mhm.
attacked any which way that they've been been able to be attacked, and they've survived, right? So now we
Right.
feel secure about it. It's called roadware. None of these PQC variants have any roadware, and you can't buy it.
Right.
So now what do you do? What you do is what the NIST is doing is anything that looks good and passes all the tests that they could think of now, we're going to create a standard for it. And then we'll let you know if they fail. Okay. So if you're the customer or the institution responsible for applying this cryptography, now your quandary is, oh, I got all of these variants. Which one do I pick? Right. Um, and then they all have trade-offs like size and speed trade-offs. And which one do I pick? And what do I do if I pick the wrong one 2 years down the road? Right. And so that is where this problem of crypto agility has now come into play is how do you switch in an agile way very
Right.
quickly from one cryptography to another without major system overhauls and time and commitment to do that. And that's where we come into play. QFlex allows you to do this type of gymnastic with cryptography ciphers on a message level, change it from one message to the next. Um, the normal way of doing it is you stop systems and then
Right.
you start them with the new cryptography. And the way they deal with past data that's been ciphered is a whole nother problem, right?
Right. Right.
Qflex has solved all of that, and we have a comprehensive solution to do that. And so, I know that this is a long story, but there's a lot of little factors that come into play, a lot of history, and also the realization that cryptography at its essence right now is not an exact science in that there's provable ways to say this is absolutely secure.
Right.
There's only been ever one cipher that's ever been proven secure, and that's called the one-time pad. So it's not like you're devoid of secure stuff, but the one-time pad is absolutely useless for a digital world, for
Right.
communication over the network, and so it's generally not used. Seen dramatic representations of it in the like these military movies where they crack open a code thing and they read each other keys, right? That's the
Right.
one-time pad. You can't do that for people using it for bank transactions and setting up
Right.
the streaming or whatever. You can't do it. So we have to resort to imperfect, unprovable um, cryptography, and that's where we are, and that's where we're probably going to be for the next, the future, right?
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I think back to kind of my German roots because my German family immigrated 7 generations ago. And I think back to World War II, which my grandfather was actually alive during World War II. So the very first examples of cryptography was, of course, Morse code, right? Where you're just sending these long and short sounds over the airwaves, and then you could then have your cryptography embedded, your secret code, if you will, embedded
Yeah.
into those little tones. Well, now, of course, we've gotten much more secure today. But in the post quantum world, which means once quantum computing is ubiquitous, which in other words means you have a very smart computer and set of computers that are everywhere, even at the edge, in your cell phone, in your car, in your computer, your current security methods, your passwords, will all be hackable. So I'm excited to get into that topic later when we talk about future tech. But coming back to funding, you have experience raising 100K for your company. You also personally are an accredited investor, having invested over $500,000 yourself into projects, as well as now securing $1 million once you've kind of gotten that, call it market fit with your product. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about that journey of how you started to get in to become an investor yourself, and also what are some of the things you look for when you're investing into a cybersecurity or a post-quantum product or team?
So I have not invested in other companies. I invest in myself because I think it's a healthy thing to do. And if you don't have that kind of conviction, why would anybody else invest in you, right? You can't do that.
That's so good.
Although you've
That's so
seen
good.
other, you've seen a lot of startups do that where they don't have
Yeah.
conviction, but they know how to sell, right?
Well, that's the first question that an investor is going to ask a founder is how much of your own,
Right.
of course, blood, sweat, equity, but how much money have you actually ponied up? And hey, if you're a founder out there listening to this and you haven't invested any capital, well, why would someone else invest? So I
Right.
really do appreciate that. And no one on this show over 55 episodes now has said that specifically. So the first step is invest in yourself. So people who are in career right now, maybe you're in a career currently, or you're thinking about making a transition into technology, and you really want to start that company, put aside a little nest egg of finance where you can say, you know what, I think I can really cut down my costs. I can get to a very lean monthly spend or cost structure. And then I can invest and have that nest egg to say, give me 6 to 12 to maybe 18 months of runway. And that's exactly what I did while I was at Microsoft, right? I put up that little nest egg and I said, hey, look, I'm investing in the future, in myself, in what I believe in my team for the next 6 to 18 months. Okay, so now that one has invested in themselves, what was that process like to get that first 6-figure check? And how did you really prove to your investors that, hey, you know what? This 100K is going to be really efficient in my use of funds?
Well, first thing I tell them is that I don't take a paycheck, right? So that's how I attest to the frugality of how we run this operation. And also to make sure that we're working on adding value and doing the work that we're doing and to the best of our ability. So that is what we tell them. We actually live by that, and we try not to deal with too much fluff. Now, maybe sometimes you could fault us for not engaging with, let's say, like social media as much as we should. Um, and we have been getting better at that because we have been getting some professional help with that. And but that is also I would say, I'm going to be honest with you, it's a generational thing, right? uh,
Right.
it's a very strange environment to get used to,
Yes.
but you see that it is the way things are communicated and highlighted. So we have to deal with it, and I think we're learning, we're getting better. I am not as comfortable as some of the younger people and other savvy people in the industry. But I think for us, for the investor, we have to live up to what we tell them. In my mind, tell them straight out, sort of like what is going on, how we're thinking about things going forward, and be upfront with them. In my quarterly investor letters, I tell them like what the status is, what our cash balances are, how we're spending the money, what our future holds in the next like 6 to 12 months. And what we're trying to do to get this thing more mainstream and
Yes.
start generating revenue. Now,
Yes.
I know that when you talk to most VCs, you're going to get a large category of VCs who basically says, um, we're not interested in talking to you unless you have already revenues, right?
Right.
So,
Definitely in the venture capital realm, right? So
right,
go
I
back
mean, you're right.
maybe like to angels and wealthy friends and family round, right? We're talking about pre-seed, pre-revenue, right? So you've invested some of your money, you now have investor relations. Tell
Yep.
us a little bit about the early stage, because even some people would say, hey, 100K is too much. Like you give an early founder 100K, they may blow through that in 2, 3 months. One of our startups, actually, we were at a 250K run rate per month with just a handful, a dozen people. So tell us a little bit more about how you quantify that need for that six figures. And, when you're talking to an investor, let's just say a generational investor that might be representing either themselves or a small angel group, how do you really qualify that, yeah, I am the person, or this idea is the person, or this team is the team to really take this idea forward?
I think I've surrounded sort of this company with people I've worked with, and for before, and we already have a really great working relationship. We know who can do what and what they're good at, and we're also discovering, new tricks, right? That each person could learn to do as needs arise within a startup. So I think that is a really critical answer. That you know there's this notion that you could just go out and get a bunch of people to do all this work for you. A lot of times I believe that those efforts fail
Right.
because a lot of the startup effort is, you may have the greatest idea, but if it's not executed properly, it's going to fall flat
Right.
on its face, right? So
Right.
you need that core group of people who could execute technologically, strategically, and business wise. And and that's it's I gotta say that I'm the first person to admit that we've not been perfect, but we're learning, and we're learning to do better each time.
Good. I love that. Well, Yoon, it is a pleasure to have you on this show. We got right into the depths of the technology and the technical, so I really appreciate that. We have a real joy here with you on the show. So we're going to move right along into our second topic, which our categories on this show, again, are funding, faith, and future. So we're going to get right into our faith topic.
Okay.
Focusing on faith for a moment.
So I love this topic, faith. I love the topic we have today as well, which is really about protecting privacy and trust in technology. So why don't we start at the very basic? What does faith, and I use that word very specifically, what does faith actually mean to you, Yoon?
Well, just to say right off the top, I am not a overly religious person. So, I have gone to a parochial school when I was young, very young, and didn't really enjoy it because at that time, corporal punishment was real. And but I believe that if you I did end up going to university for the sciences, so engineering, mechanics, and physics, and you learn that even with science, there is there's a limit, right? And there's things that cannot be explained, but we know how to use it scientifically and engineering wise. And so there's always this sense of how did all of this stuff come about, right? And the other thing is that in this journey with first with Nuts Technologies was when I was trying to figure out, and you might like this one. When I was trying to figure out how do we make data more private for myself, how do I make it easier to use? I initially tried to concoct a solution of buying software, that's available to a normal retail user. And because I know technology and I know how to use it, to put it together in ways that can work for me, in order to provide this privacy. And that absolutely failed. You can't. These products are not designed to be put together in such a way, and it can't be done. And so I started looking for solutions. And computer science is one of those fields that you probably have access to almost all the best types of thinking in these published papers, published doctoral theses, master's theses, published research projects that you can gather data very, very quickly on the internet. And I surmise that after my research that there is no model, there's no architecture or approach that can satisfy the problem set that I've come for set up for myself in this privacy quest. Um, then I happened to see a Nova special, one of the PBS Nova series on science on DNA. And when I started looking at DNA as a data model, um, I started realizing that the evolution itself has had a lot of the same data problems that we're experiencing within our modern computer systems. And evolution within your own bodies have figured out how to evolve your DNA into giving it objective functions and a method of replicating itself and protecting itself that we don't even do in our modern systems. And when you start looking at your body for from DNA as a data perspective, it's a remarkable system because not only is it self-organizing and self-replicating, self-healing, um, it it manages through one DNA strand to grow your body into trillions and trillions of cells and organize it to function as you and manage all of this data. So think about the complexity. There is no system that's human made on Earth that can manage the amount of data that's sitting in your body today. There's no such thing. So you start questioning things like, oh, wow, look at this. The idea for nuts is just basically following the framework that evolutionary biology has figured out in order to solve some of these complex data problems. And so, in terms of faith, you go, wow, that's kind of crazy because if you look at DNA as a data model, It is one of the most sophisticated data models I've ever seen in computer science. Um, and it's the only one that I know of that is not made by man. It makes men or women or people, right? It's a fascinating kind of perspective
Yeah.
on where science and biology and faith intersect, right? Because so if I was
Yeah.
a really faithful and religious person, I'd be saying, hey, that is like the hand of God, right? And
Right.
and but so when I took this nuts concept and started talking to people about it, I was very fortunate in that I was able to talk to some of the most um, unbelievable people on the internet.
Right.
Um, so, I've had an instance to talk to Vint Cerf for an hour on the Kflex protocol. Um,
Wow.
Very early on, he's one of the godfathers of the internet, the
Right.
co-creator of TCP/IP, right?
Should have him on the show.
He grilled me for half an hour on a one-on-one interview that he set up, and he wanted to know what I was doing because it hit at the heart of his work.
Right.
And I said, this is what I did to secure message protocols at the message level.
Yeah.
And he grilled me. It felt like the nightmare stories that you hear about, oral qualification exams for
Yeah.
PhD, right? He was grilling me. I was actually sweating. I was trying to answer every question as best as I can. And after 35 minutes, he eased off and he was satisfied. He said, "Oh, you're not doing any magic here, but it all
Yeah.
kind of makes sense." That was like the first glimpse that what I developed based upon the framework of DNA as viewed from a data model perspective is actually workable within a
Yeah.
computer environment.
Yeah.
And then I had the good fortune to meet a former deputy director of Cyber Command, or U.S. Cyber Command. So
Yeah.
these are the
So Space
people
Force,
helping.
basically.
These are the people who actually protect our nation's networks,
Right.
right?
Right.
And
Absolutely. There's a huge war going on in cybersecurity, and people, it's
right,
an unseen war, right? That people don't
right,
really always see, on social or visuals or in the news. And I really appreciate the point you brought up about, hey, you know what? The human DNA, we're still kind of figuring that out. So whether you are a person of faith or you grew up with a religious background or you have some moral or ethical compasses, even atheists have these compasses, right? So from a faith point of view, yeah, understanding that, hey, there is a level of like a divine intelligence, right? And that's kind of a concept, a divine intelligence that kind of sits above, even outside of our ability to comprehend. And then, of course, we have humans, right? Our parents made us, we make children. And then, of
right.
course, you have the machines, which we created the machines. So, yeah, will we get to a place where we have post quantum, AGI robots running around and ruling the world? I mean, Elon Musk and others would maybe think yes. But in terms of privacy and trust, I want to lean in there because with our agentic AI and quantum going everywhere, we have our personal data sitting in these agentic bots sitting everywhere. And who knows where that personal data is going? In fact, we even get ads all the time, even within
Right.
30 seconds of us saying something. So are we really actually private and secure? I talked to some billionaires and they invest, millions of dollars to erase themselves from the internet. Now, being on a live show, it's going to be very difficult to erase this, live show from the internet. And that's kind of the purpose, is to be authentically here. But in a world of emerging technology, maybe as we prepare for our final topic in the future realm, like how do you actually be private in a world where, you know what, our younger generations are almost subscribing to anti-privacy. It's like, hey, here, take all my data, make it better, give me more personal experiences without kind of violating my trust. But in a post-quantum world, like what does privacy look like when maybe the algorithms know more about us than we even know about ourselves?
Well, I mean, I think there's you got to first come up with, there's a difference. Like when you mentioned this podcast, it's going to be
Yes,
out there forever, but we both agreed to do this.
of
It's a
course.
conscious
Yes.
decision to make something public, right? So, if, you know, if we were designed to be like the internet, if our bodies, evolution designed us to be that way, um, we would be able to read each other's minds, right? Because at that point, there's no privacy. Um, and that is kind of the state that we are in the digital internet, is that there's so many holes. It's basically, you could these companies and these bad actors can actually can read your digital mind, right? Whatever you put out there, and whether you think it's private or not. And but so the nuts way of doing things is to try and preserve and replicate the inherent privacy in nature's model, right? So our the way we're built is that unless I speak or write or express to somebody else what I am thinking, they will not know. Um, and we believe that that has to be emulated back into the digital arena.
Right.
That you have to give it. Data is born private first, and then
Yeah.
made public by a conscious decision, right?
Right. Well, I immediately think of quantum and even Neuralink, right? So talk about like maybe the disabled scenario where, for example, you have someone who's paralyzed from the neck down. And I even see these gamers on Twitch all the time. They have these, and Microsoft made a really beautiful device that was
Yeah.
a mouth and airway and air-based controller where a paraplegic can actually navigate and play video games with just their mouth. And it's really, really just fascinating to see modern technology, especially in a biotech realm. Now, thinking about the Neuralink scenario where, hey, just some of these electrical magnetic pathways of just my thoughts can actually be harvested to control computers, make decisions, and do that sort of a thing. So, in a world where it's not just hardware and software, but now there's this quantum dimension that we're actually exploring. I mean, how does one actually stay private and secure, without having to go to the mountains in the middle of, Washington State and the Cascades, where, for 55 miles in that stretch on Mount Rainier, there's like no reception. I mean, yeah, of course you can get some satellite internet out there, but you're in places where there's no Wi-Fi, no code. You're maybe in the mountains, like maybe that's the most private and secure way where you're actually completely silent. But even out there, I mean, people are kind of, the technology is still listening and archiving some of that data. And even in a post-quantum world, we had Nita Lad on the show, who is focusing on kind of post-quantum cryptography, where a lot of these cybersecurity firms are just archiving all of this hashed secure data, and sometimes even putting it in cold storage on laser, where eventually they can retrieve that. And then with quantum computers, just very efficiently, once the pricing and the effectiveness of costs come down, can kind of hack all that data. So how does a firm prepare themselves to be PQC ready? It's kind of like a security event, right? Like no one knows that they need security, whether it's physical, hardware, software, or quantum, until there is a security incident. So
Right.
from your perspective, as we go into our third topic here, like how would you recommend companies to really cover themselves, not just SOC 2 compliance and this 27001 compliance methodology, but how does a company prepare now to have the governance so that they can be not only AI secure and automation secure, but really post quantum cryptography secure?
Well, I think the way you frame the question almost answers itself. Is that um, our approaches to security have so many different methods that are non-integrated, and we believe on our side that what we've developed is that cybersecurity itself, even including the cryptography that you're using, whether it's traditional cryptography or post-quantum cryptography, has to be integrated right into the data level, and it has to basically travel with the data. So there's two kind of things that you could do here. One is that one approach is that you hide, right? Hide in plain sight. And how do you hide in plain sight? And that is, you don't identify yourself very easily, right? And that's one way of doing it. And then on top of that, you have this other approach that is, while you're hiding, you protect everything that you create, and then therefore the controls that you have is what you make public, you got to do an action on it rather than the other way around, which is you make everything public and you try to pull things back into private realm. So that is our two approaches. One is hide in plain sight, and then protect by default, and that gives you a lot more control over your life digitally.
Yeah.
If you're using these services where you're on LinkedIn, you're using popular messaging services,
Right.
there's very much not there's not that very much you can do to control
Right.
what the service providers provide you, because their business models are built upon
Right. Monetizing your
mining the
data.
data. Right.
Exactly.
So these are the firms that are best. They have the most resources to produce the
Right.
technology to give you that privacy, but they're inherently misaligned. They're
Right.
they're 180-degree misaligned, right? So they're never going to do it.
That's right.
And at that point, that is the exact question I asked my founding team and myself.
Right.
What do you do when you think you have the solution or a solution,
Right.
and you don't think anybody else is willing to do it?
Right.
Do you raise your
I love
hand and
that.
try it or not, right?
Well, you don't want to be saying, hey, and like, I told you so, but I think sometimes you learn through experience and sometimes you learn through good mentorship and good application, right? So yeah, these are really, really forward thinking, pioneering conversations in terms of how to protect yourself post-quantum. And I'm excited to actually talk about our third category here of future tech.
Let's talk about quantum and the future of technology.
All right. If you're joining us for the first time, go ahead and post some comments. Tell us where you're at. We're here talking about quantum threats and blockchain security. And I am just so happy to have Yoon, the founder of Boltz Technologies, here on the show with us today. So, what is a good, tangible example of a quantum threat?
Quantum threat would be that they develop a powerful enough quantum computer. Whether you talk to some people, it could happen in 3 years, it could happen in 10 years. Some people say it's going to be 25 years or never. But the theoretical threat is real, that the capability that they're exhibiting now at such low computing power, that if it expands, can crack modern cryptography, especially a type of cryptography called elliptic curve cryptography. And so when it comes to blockchains, when blockchains first came out, there was almost no talk of which cryptography do we use. It just automatically, kind of like everybody who developed blockchains went to elliptic curve cryptography because it was deemed to be secure at the time. It was very small in key sizes and digital signature sizes, which makes it very, very compact and economical. And it was very fast. So computation speed mattered, and if you want to try to do a lot of transactions. And so blockchains migrated automatically by default to like using ECC everywhere for authenticating a user spending their crypto or receiving crypto. Everything is done by elliptic curve cryptography digital signatures. So if you take a look at the world now, probably upwards of 99, 98% of the cryptographic assets that's on various blockchains is protected by elliptic curve cryptography. And it's not just one elliptic curve, there's many, many variants for elliptic curve. And so that's how the risk has now focused in on that one type of protection mechanism.
Right.
Now quantum comes along and says, hey, we may be able to break that. So this is almost like, everybody in the world locks their doors at night. Every apartment door, every house
Right.
door is the same lock manufacturer. And
Right.
somebody finds a way to
A
break that
skeleton
lock.
key.
Right,
Right.
right. And now you're like, we need to change locks, right?
Right.
And the problem is that you're looking for locks that could be forever secure. There is no
Right.
such thing, not yet.
Not yet.
And you may find the lock that you choose, which is now these post-quantum cryptography ciphers that are resilient to
Right.
quantum cryptography, quantum computing, um, that they may fail overnight. And if you do, you want to change that door lock very quickly, right?
Right.
How do you do that? Now, what we bring to the equation is that, oh, changing locks quickly, crypto agility, very
Right.
important. The way most applied cryptographers are thinking about crypto agility is let's stop the system, put in the new cryptography, and then have a migration path and have everybody change over at the same time, right?
Right.
And those are incredibly painful.
Right. And by
And
that time, perpetrators or nefarious parties have already gone inside your house. They're cooking
right,
in your kitchen. They're checking out your bathroom. I mean, they're in the attic, like all these things, right? And
right.
almost to build on that metaphor, it's like you don't even need another lock. It's not, you don't need a faster horse, right? In
Well,
quantum cryptography, you need like a car, or you need to like destroy the house and like build something underground and have like a DNA or like a biometric form of security. It's like you can't even just replace it with a key lock. It's like it's got to be post quantum ready, especially
so
if you're on blockchain, right? Which we all thought blockchain was hyper secure, but guess what, guys? Quantum breaks blockchain. So focusing on that future tech topic of quantum and blockchain, how do blockchain owners, which is your primary audience, how do blockchain owners prepare to be post quantum ready?
they need the right technology crew that can ferret out the best solutions,
Right.
um, and be able to assess it and see how to protect the future. Now, one thing that I did not mention before when I was talking about the cryptography landscape is that I told you that the NIST in the US has been the kind of the unofficial world's you know kind of standards maker for cryptography. Um, but now that's changing. China and South Korea has their own PQC agencies, and they're creating their own standards, which is different variants of the same type of crypto.
Right. Right.
Now
Yeah.
you
Well, this is really fascinating, Yoon.
and
Yeah.
so now you have multiple lock makers all attesting
Right.
that you got to use this. So if you're in their jurisdiction, you got to use their types of locks. How does
Right.
financial companies talk to one another across when jurisdictional cryptography comes into place? Um, how do you change quickly enough? How do you even do
Right.
that interoperability? Very complex problems. And
Right.
so that's where you need forward thinking. You need a better
Right.
technology that is very agile. So I don't know. I grew up watching like kung fu movies and Bruce Lee
Yeah.
movies, right? So
Nice.
you know that like when Bruce Lee created Jeet Kune Do, right? One of his things was that you don't stick to a style, right? You adjust to the fighter that you're fighting at the
Right.
instant that you're fighting, and
Right.
that's why he doesn't have a form, right?
Right.
And and
Exactly.
and so that's what you got to do. That is like if that's martial arts agility, we got to
Right.
do the same type of thing with crypto agility. Is you got to
Right.
change on the fly. If you see the vulnerabilities, start passing it over to the next one, right? Very very
Yeah.
quick. Yep.
Yoon, this is so good. This is so incredibly good. I am just elated and so grateful that you're on the show. Of course, we have cultural similarities and also a deep passion for crypto and quantum blockchain. So, you know what? Just before we close up, I feel like we could talk for hours on this. We're going to have you back on the show. But we do have a special anchor segment, which I'm excited to share with you and with the team. So let's go ahead and go to our anchor segment, Beyond the Bag. Beyond the bag, beyond the bag, beyond the bag. Okay, so this segment is all about Yoon. What do you carry with you in your bag with you? I'm a traveling guy. I typically travel with just a 15-liter bag. I've got my 15-liter bag here only. So very lightweight. So I do care about every little thing in my bag. So I'm curious, what is in your bag today?
I carry. I don't know if you can see it. Tiny little LED flashlights.
Nice.
So I have
Why
so
do you
many
carry
of
this?
these. I bought different types, and my wife thinks I'm insane because I keep buying these LED flashlights because
That's
I
fine.
find them fascinating. I've always found LED technology, the development of blue LED light,
Right.
unbelievably fascinating and inspirational.
Yeah.
So if you have a
Nice.
chance to see the Veritasium, a documentary on that one. It's
Okay.
unbelievable that it took that
Nice.
much effort to do that. But so
Nice.
I carry these tiny little LED lights. They keep changing form and function. They're making them even better these days, and it's
Right.
unbelievable how they're producing this technology. But I just I don't know. I'm fascinated with little LED flashlights.
Yeah, I love that. You know what? I love light. And when we think about light, it's so fascinating, and there's so much we still have to learn about light and the speed of light. I do carry an LED flashlight myself here,
Right,
because you
right.
never know when you're going to be in the dark. But for me, for today, for my Beyond the Bag, I have a sticker here from the astronaut team from Boston Tech Week, and it's Get Shit Done. They are an agentic aggregator company. They have the astronaut theme kind of going on here, which is so
Yep.
kind of culturally appropriate given the NASA venture and the astronauts and all those things. And they're you can find out more about them at Get Houston AI, where they're basically creating a wrapper for agentic AI on top of Claude, ChatGPT, and then of course Composio, which connects to all of your platforms. So Yoon, this has been such an incredible show. We're actually out of time, unfortunately, but I wanted to give you just a chance to kind of reintroduce yourself, share a little bit more about Bolt Technologies, and most importantly, how can people get connected with you?
Sure. I'm the founder of Bolts Technologies. We're a company that specializes in what we call hyper crypto agility and cryptographic logistics. We bring cryptography, especially post quantum cryptography, to where it's needed, when it's needed, by who it's needed by. And it is a really, really revolutionary technology that we're going to help blockchains secure all of their digital assets. And we'll just start one at a time. And the best way to contact me is through, our boltstechnologies.xyz website, as well as my LinkedIn page. You could look up my name, and an easy way to just reach out to me, and I'll respond.
Nice. That's wonderful. Well, you know what? I hope that you connect with Yoon as a resident expert now on the David Daily Show. You're now part of our community. And I just want to say, for those of you who are still watching, please like and subscribe on the show. We really appreciate clicking the notifications icon, click all notifications so you too can be part of the conversation on our live stream. And also, I would just say next week, we have a very special guest as well next Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern. So please tune into the David Daily Show. And just to let you know, we will be taking the month of July off to kind of do some rebranding and also to relaunch season 3. Can you believe we're already at season 3? All right, folks. Thanks again, Yoon. We will see you next week on the David Daily Funding, Faith, and Future. Take care.
Thank you for having me.